In the grand arena of life, every man faces his own unique seasons, times of triumph, struggle, growth, and reflection. Your legacy is forged not just by the challenges you face, but by the quality of your thoughts and actions. Welcome to the Legacy Podcast with Ernest Wood, where we explore the path to true happiness, enduring legacy, and becoming the man you're meant to be.
Hey, welcome to the Legacy Podcast. My name is Ernest Wood. I have a great guest today. He's a podcaster himself, and he fits right into what my theme is. Um, Guys go through different seasons in life, and sometimes we have to hit that rock bottom or what our bottom is, and we find that, and then all of a sudden we find our purpose in life, or what makes us happy, find ourselves, and that's kind of what happened to John. He had a 20-year career and a marriage, and they lost both of them pretty close to the same time. Came out of it a better man. He has a podcast. It's called, hold on one second. It's called Life's Checkmark. And I'm going to let him talk a little bit about it. So, John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I came out of a 20-year job where I was working, and they closed around the COVID time, not due to COVID. So this is about 4 years ago, somewhere around that time. And then within the same year, the word divorce was mentioned to me, and we were pretty much on our 15th year of being married. And I have a son and a daughter at the moment, and that was a whole life experience I had to go through. So going through the two life-changing events in the same year was different. And I've heard a lot of things like people like, wow, double whammy or whatever, right? Thinking that a lot of people don't experience stuff like that. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. So that was my journey going through that. And then ultimately wound up leading me to starting a podcast probably 2 years after all that happened, because I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now. And almost the same thing, kind of like what you have going on in a sense. People are coming on sharing their journey in life, because I was curious to see what other people are experiencing, how they got through it. And it kind of just went from there. And I didn't know I'd be doing it this long. I didn't do it to create an audience. I didn't do it to monetize. I just did it to learn myself, and hopefully it reaches that one person that can benefit from what that person shares.
How many episodes have you done now?
It'd be 143 this week.
143. They say I think I was just chatting with a guy earlier this week. What is it? Less than 10% of all podcasts get past 3 episodes. And then once you get past 3, less than 10% of those get to 21. So you're at 142. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's about the same. That's about the same numbers I hear too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so you kind of have guys, and you have guys, men and women, come on to their stories, or mainly
I do.
more men?
Yeah. Yeah, it's whatever life experience they have. It's just I'm looking for people with open, honest, vulnerable, authentic conversations, and just see where it goes.
It's cool. Do you do some coaching on the side also?
Yeah, so since I hesitated like 6 months to start my podcast, I created a coaching program to help people start their own podcast. And then I also started a podcast community, which right at the moment has 34 members in it.
35 pretty soon.
All right. Yeah. Hey, yeah, we got a special guest coming in tomorrow night. She's going to be talking about using your podcast for lead generation.
Oh, dang. That might be one I definitely need.
Yeah.
So what else do you do? Did you start a different career?
Yeah. So obviously going through divorce and everything, I had to make sure I could figure out how I'm going to carry myself and carry the kids when I have them, and even when I don't have them, in a sense, right? So yeah, I do have a job still, 9 to 5, as you would call it, working as a warehouse supervisor in a manufacturing company. That's basically what I've kind of known my whole life, in a sense. That was kind of like the same area for my 20-year career I had going at the same time. It's nothing I really care to keep pursuing down the road, because I am enjoying everything I'm doing at the moment with podcasting and stuff. It's which led me to speaking opportunities and stuff. And I enjoy reaching and touching people in a different way. Obviously, I haven't created anything to inspire them in a way to make their lives better besides the podcast. But that's my goal with other people starting their own podcast. And I mean, just think of all the people you could actually reach if you have another 10 people starting a podcast, you know.
Um, So you said have you done some speaking engagements?
I have. So January, I spoke at a event here local to me for about 10 minutes. Wasn't nothing crazy, but it was my first one. And I was delighted to be up on stage. And it was more not just a stage, but it was a catwalk. Because she had a runway show going on after that. So I was able to actually like walk down the runway for a little bit. So that was a new experience. I thought I was going to be like crazy nervous. I really wasn't. I think with podcasting stuff made me feel a little bit more comfortable. There was chairs on each side, maybe about 20 on each side, not full, but people were sitting in the chairs, and then it was kind of loud because off to the side they had all the tables and stuff with the people that had stuff to offer, kind of vendors and whatnot going on. So both in the same room, not the greatest, but it was an experience. And then after that weekend, I launched my own event with five other podcasters up in New York. So I did that for free, wanted to see how it went. And it was great. Not a huge turnout with people not showing up to besides not a great turnout for others than just the speakers and stuff. I mean, there was about 5 people there to hear and learn, but it was an experience to, I was able to actually take my kids, and they were actually able to hear me and everybody else and actually realize what's going on, what's shaping the world and stuff. And then come May, I'll be in Texas speaking as well. So what, I don't know yet. I'm figuring that out. Probably, I'll be honest with you, I'm thinking about like values, mission, and vision, like, learning that for yourself and taking that and carrying that through your life, not just a business standpoint, but your own personal life.
So going back to that your tough year, how did you end up like growing? What was the like some of your, because I always try to get helpful hints to the next guy who's going through a similar situation, because unfortunately, we all get in those situations and we think we're the only one that's doing it. But I had a guy on a few months ago, and his year was not comparing years, but he lost his job, he got cancer, he was an addict, he lost his business, his home, and everything. So like it happens to like a lot of people, and his advice was get rid of your story mind. So you probably came up with something that you changed in life, and if you mind sharing those.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to explain it. A story in mind. So for me, in a sense, it's kind of like the podcast, life's check mark. Like I was kind of like programmed in a way, like this is how my life has to be, right? Get a job, et cetera, and wife, kids, and whatnot. So I always had that in my head. And so now that I lost a job, I had an opportunity now. After it took me a while to think of as an opportunity, but now I had an opportunity to pursue something different. Uh, which I did dive into life insurance within that year for a little bit there, until things were a little shaky at home and I was trying to figure things out. So I wound up getting another 95 when it was, I guess, just a little too late, I guess, if you could say. But going back January in that year, like I said, that's the kind of time I was trying to figure things out, because behaviors were changing, all this stuff was going on, and I couldn't, mentally I couldn't figure it out. And you kind of shy away from a few questions because you shouldn't be, you're curious, but you don't want to be like, hey, I don't trust you, et cetera, right? And so I never felt that in my heart that I couldn't trust the person I was with. For me, I found a podcast. I know it's funny to say, but I listened to Dad's Edge, and it was probably like 2 or 3 years prior to that. It was more for me at the time. I was trying to learn to be a better father. I wanted to kind of show up a little bit differently. And so when in this moment, this podcast came on again, for whatever reason, I don't remember the episode, I don't remember anything like that, but I do remember and they still have this today. They have like a membership thing where all men can come together. It's a tribe, talk about finances, anything you can imagine. So they had all these Zoom calls going on different days at the time. And I tried tapping into a few of them. It was kind of tough for me because like again, I didn't know where things were going in my life. So I didn't really want to lose the time with my kids for the time I had with them at the moment. But what I did was I connected with like 4 or 5 men, and through text or phone calls, Messenger, Zoom, whatever you want to call it. And it was kind of like a lifeline in a way. So I was mentally in my head trying to figure stuff out, as we all are. And there was no really one person close to me in my area I could say I could kind of lean on in a way, right? Because everybody seems to weigh in on both sides or lean to one side when stuff like this is going on. So sometimes it's the strangers that show up in your life that you need the most, because they can take in your side, they can understand the other side a little bit too, and just say, hey, look, this is where you should be headed in this direction. That's how I felt. Some of these men have been down the road I was in. Some of them were trying to figure things out too. And it got me to the point where I consider this one guy was a coach, and I still know him today. And he has his own business and stuff, right? So I was delighted that I was able to Facebook message him every once in a while, like I was losing stuff in my head. And he's like, just breathe, just all you have to do is say one word, just breathe, right? Because your mind is going crazy. And this isn't just like going through divorce, it could be anything, right? And we just tend to doubt ourselves so much and think that we're less of a person than who we truly are. But sometimes it's the people around us that bring us down, and we don't need that in our lives. So we have to build ourselves back up. He had a course he called masculinity something, or there was 2 words to it. So I was like, all right, I don't know what all this masculine stuff is, all this feminine stuff is, the energy. I never leaned into that. I had no idea until everything I was experiencing. So I joined the program. It was me, him, and another guy. And it was 4 Zoom calls, 1 per week for 4 weeks. So the first 2, I'll be honest with you, I was like emotional, still like it was getting progressively worse at home. Like, even though the word wasn't mentioned, but I just couldn't figure things out. The third time, he's like, you sound better, you look better. I think you're on the right track. Things are going different for you. And I said, yeah, I said, I do feel better. I don't remember the exact words, but I was getting to the point where I guess wherever things were to go in my life, I was willing to accept. And so it was probably a week or so before the word divorce came to me that, we ended that program, and I was able to learn a lot of things, like, the communication between a man and a female, and a lot of other little, tips and tricks that you can carry along the way. So it wasn't just like carrying me through the motion of where I was, but I can still carry this today. And so when the word divorce came to me, I was able to say, okay, I was kind of like, I'm ready to move on. I gave as much as I could before that. I held on as long as I could. And at the time I was willing to accept. And so that led me into another journey of, how do I carry myself thereafter? But that's how I set myself up, in a sense, like, to be ready. And I don't want to say I had suicidal thoughts or anything like that, but I do see why men struggle so much, because the woman already considered moving on already months prior, and it's just a shock to you because you weren't prepared for it. And that's exactly how I felt. That's exactly what happened. And so I've learned too that 10 men from divorce commit suicide every day. Now, it doesn't mean it's right away. It could be years later, right? Because people, they lose their house, they lose things financially and everything else like that. So it's a lot to weigh in on. But that's how it started.
It is a very stressful situation. I was married for 20 years the first time, and then went through the divorce, ended up giving her the house, taking over all the freaking debt, half the 401k and stuff. So, but I think it, I think like you were talking about it being alone, right? You have to have somebody there because a lot of guys, they get into a situation where it's just their career, and then their family. But their career is taking over everything. So that's usually the reason that the family's leaving. And so then they are alone besides a couple people they work with. And then they usually don't get along with them too well either. So it it's a tough awakening. It doesn't just happen though, right? It builds up over time. Something was amiss for more than just a couple months to have that word divorce come up, right? And I think we miss it a lot as men. We're so busy trying to provide, trying to do what we think is right, like that's the only thing that we lack communication. And I always talk about it, man. It's, being able to communicate is one of those huge things, no matter what you're doing in life, being married, having your kids. And so many of us, we just don't communicate. And that's usually a big part of the problem.
It is. Yeah, and I believe that was part of it too. But it takes two. It takes two, right, to make that
Oh,
work. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I'm not just blaming the men for sure,
Right. Right.
but I just like to speak from the men's side because I know like how I am, and then from a lot of the guests I've spoken with. But you said a couple cool things, like you had to. Now you look at the divorce as an opportunity, but at the time that it was happening, it was like I just went to a Tony Robbins event. You can look at life is happening for you or life is happening to you, right? And it's all about shifting that mindset and realizing life is happening for you and you can learn something from just about everything that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that took a while for me too, the two and the four. I that was opened up to me as well. But yeah, it's the mind shift to become better and understand where you're at and that that everything will be okay, even though it might take time, is something we all have to work on.
And then you talked about your one buddy saying breathe. It's funny because in our world today, breath is one of those things that's totally jacked up. It should be natural. We do it, we do it all the time. But there's a study done that like more than 50% of people are mouth breathers now, and mouth breathing is absolutely horrible for you. But when you think about it and you watch people and people are stressed out, they start breathing through their mouth. And that whole mouth breathing causes, it doesn't relieve the stress, but once you learn how to breathe properly, you can actually get rid of a lot of the stress in your life. I've been doing Wim Hof breathing every single morning, and I do some meditation, and I definitely contribute my getting rid of depression all from like breathing and learning that stuff.
Good. Yeah, I heard good things about it too. I've tried it just a few times. I never really dove into it as much, but yeah, it's out there. Like it's becoming more mainstream than anything now.
Oh, so you don't do any meditation and stuff? I
I,
just
I
heard you
medit
say something.
I meditate. I haven't done the breath work part.
Oh, okay. So how many days a week do you meditate?
Once every day. So
Once every day?
it's about 10 minutes in the morning.
And then were you doing that before, or did this only start happening after the marriage?
All afterwards. I worked on a morning routine, which took time to build up. What did I have to apply? I had to figure that out. And to where I am today, it's grown over the past few years. Nothing crazy, something I could complete in a 30 minutes or less if I wanted to, but I do carry myself where I take my time, right? I don't want to push myself to hurry up and get ready for the day. It's just not in my nature to be rushed.
That's another little important thing. I always coach that too, as have a good morning routine, have a good night routine, which falls in getting some good sleep, and then a fantastic morning routine to start your day. What's your morning routine?
Yeah, so I get up, I'll take the dog outside, I'll get a cup of coffee, I'll stretch while the coffee's brewing and stuff, nothing crazy. Again, this could be done in a few minutes. And then I'll grab a cup of coffee. What I do is I'll sit on bed and I'll listen to or watch a YouTube video that's motivational while I'm drinking my coffee because it's hot, obviously. So I take my time there. Then I'll tap into the meditation. So there's one in particular on YouTube I've been listening to for quite a while, And so I'll use that. That's 10 minutes long. And then I'll write three things that I'm grateful for after that. And then I'll pray. I'll pray to God and, for whatever I have going on in my head at the time, the people that are struggling around me, anything. And so that's what sets me up for the day. After that, I'll just carry on throughout the day to get ready for the day afterwards.
Three things you're grateful for, man. I've been trying to do that. I try to do it every single day. Also, crazy little proven stat that it doing that for like 6 weeks increases your happiness by 25%.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it changes that mindset, right? You're looking for something to be grateful for. My thing, like what I do is one thing I'm grateful for about me, one thing I'm grateful for about my spouse, and then one thing I'm grateful for the world in general. Do you have like a certain subjects that you do or
Not really. I guess, like one of the big things, I'll be honest with you, is I'm grateful for like my struggles, right? Because if I don't have my struggles, then how am I supposed to learn? So that's something I can look at in a sense, like what am I struggling with every day? And you could dive, it's not just has to be one big thing, but you can dive a little deeper in certain areas. And then, like it was beautiful out yesterday. It was like 80-degree weather here in Pennsylvania, and now it's 40 degrees today. So, the sun was out like that. It was amazing. So I was grateful for the sun. I was grateful to go for a hike. Yeah, I was, all that stuff. It's whatever just drives me to be thankful for what I have, where I'm at. Somebody else, I always want to be somewhere higher, better, right? We all want to, but somebody else would rather be in my shoes than the shoes that they're in now. So I have to accept that and say, yeah, even what I have now, I wish I had way back then. So I have to be thankful for that. And so like you can tap into every little thing that you have.
like that you said it, be grateful for the struggles because I've been really working on that lately and that was part of my whole journey is I always I thought, because I struggled a lot as a kid. I had a lot of little issues and whatever. And so I always thought, man, I need life to be easy. I want the easy way. But then the more that the more I got self-improved or like started liking myself more and more, I started looking forward to the struggles because when you're struggling, you're progressing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I could be wrong, but a lot of people do not like the hard times.
They don't. I don't. You don't. You know what I mean? None of us do. But we have to get through them. Like, and there's that. I think it's Ed Milet that says, we all get through 100% of our bad days, and we do. You just don't look at it that way. So, you're alive. You're here. You can fight. You can sit. You can mope. You can do whatever you want. But the opportunity is there to make a change. You just have to be willing to be that person.
I was listening to I was driving to work. Now I have an hour and a half sometimes drive to work and just started doing that. Not the funnest thing in the world, but I do learn some stuff. I was listening to Alex Hermosi and he's like, you're one decision away from changing your life and or one choice away from changing your life, right? And my choice was to start taking the struggles and growing from each one of those instead of bitching and complaining. I was a big time bitching and complainer for a long time in my life. And not, and it sounds like you've kind of taken that same road as like looking forward to the struggle to get better.
Yeah. And so I'm at the point where like I want to be happy. I want to live and enjoy life, and if you're going to let these struggles just hold you back and put you down in a hole and crawl up in the bed and just cry or whatever, I mean, that's your choice. I don't want to be that person. I'd rather just enjoy life. Don't give up on the things I have going on, especially when the kids are watching me now, right? So if I give up, they'll give up sometime down the road in their life because dad gave up. That's kind of how I look at things. And so, everything I'm doing now, like I just want to keep carrying it on. And I think they're getting to that point where they can understand and experience that, he's busy doing this for this reason, right? And how I want to keep showing up. Yeah, we don't have everything that everybody, all the rich have or whatever, but we do have more than what other people do have, right? So as long as I keep sharing that with them, but I'm sharing a lot with you, like how I just want to show up with for my kids, right? So then they can say, sometime down the road in their lives that they should be thankful too for what they have. And I push them to write what they're grateful for as well. It's like twisting arms, but still, um, something that hopefully they'll carry on later in their lives.
How old are your kids?
15 and 12.
15 and 12. Oh, that's a fun
Yeah.
age, man.
So
They're
it's a tough age. Yeah.
yeah, they're starting to get their own little crazy thoughts.
That's right. Yeah. They don't listen
But
to you.
you probably you you probably learned to communicate with them pretty well though now, right? Through some of the
Yeah, yeah, and you could see things, right? So when they start arguing because they're boy and girl, right, opposite sex, going through what I experienced, I could see the dynamic of the woman, being more emotional, right, and that's how she's speaking and stuff. And then he's like, What are you talking about? More logical, right? And I'm like in my head, sometimes I have to set them aside, like, dude, this is what's going on. This is how you have to show up and. Yeah, and I kind of carry myself too a little bit for my daughter because and she thinks it's a little weird sometimes because I'll open the door for her for the car, whatever, right? And I feel like that's how the man should show up. It's not going to be every day, right? But that's how I believe it should be. So she looks at me weird because there's that feminism out there, like I could do it myself. Um, but she'll take it all in. She enjoys it, I'm sure. But that's me showing them how I believe that a man should show up and whether, it's my son that would be providing to somebody else down the road or, somebody providing to my daughter. But yeah, it's a tough age to get the stuff through to them. And communicating, we try to sit down, at the dinner table when I have them to kind of talk like, how's the day go and what are you grateful for? We can bring that up then too and just have some kind of communication for 20 minutes, whatever, because that's something we all lost. Uh, and I always would love to have that come back. But people, like, we mentioned before, people are busy. They work, they come home, they're sports events, etc. And they're buying junk food and fast food and stuff to eat for dinner. And then they're coming home, unpacking, going to bed. So like they don't create that time, that space. And that's what we need the most. And as you might know, that's what children desire. They want that quality time. And it could be just that dinner table talk sometimes that is just enough to make them see that they're seen and noticed and appreciated for who they are.
That's such a good point. When I first started doing my coaching, my whole thing was master your life with balance. And everybody used to argue with me. There's no such thing as balance. Yeah, if you think of it directly as time, there is no balance, right? You're gonna be working, whatever it is, you're not gonna have a perfect balance with time. But if you give, like when you're with your kids and you give them that 100% and you're not on your phone checking your email, checking your text, having your face down, just doing whatever, watching a movie, but you're actually spending time with them, communicating to them, that 20 minutes can be more valuable than any 2 hour, 5 hour day if you're out there doing everything else besides chatting with them, right?
Yeah, it is. My daughter just made dinner last night, but it wasn't just her, it was me too. Like I was chopping the food up and she was making it, and that was easily over 20 minutes, with no phone or nothing. And like that's what it takes, but you have to make that space.
See, that's the way to put it. You have to make that space. It has to be a priority, right?
Yes.
Because we make so much other crap priorities in our life. Oh, I got a ding on my phone.
Yeah.
I have a stupid ass sporting event that I need to watch that has absolutely no effect on my life, but it affects everything.
Mhm.
I used to be that guy, man, a lot. I had to watch every single sport that was on TV every single time. And then when you think back about it, it's kind of like I wasted a lot of freaking time that I should have been spending with the kids and doing stuff with them instead of watching these grown men get paid a hell of a lot of money. But
That's right. That's right. I'm an Eagles fan and they won the Super Bowl. I didn't, I all I watched was the highlights. I didn't even sit down to watch the game. I was working on all this stuff, podcasts and whatnot. But yeah, so it was like a history of time in a sense that I don't know. Did I miss the 3 4 hours? Not really, because I got to see the highlights. That's all everybody ever really wants, anyways.
It's funny how much because everybody always, I don't have enough time. There's not enough time in life. There's not enough time to do this. There's not enough time to improve. Not enough time to get in shape. Well, let's go look at your, let's go look what you actually do in a day for most people, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's exactly that. That'll tell you everything.
Well, John, been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to ask you for three things that you would tell the next guy to help them out and maybe, get them through that tough time in their life.
Sure, I appreciate the opportunity here. So number one, I would say reach out to somebody. Get those thoughts out of your head because you have to share it to somebody. And like I said before, it's most likely going to be a stranger. I found them to be the easiest ones you can open up to, because who are they really going to go tell then thereafter? They're like these men I spoke with. One was in Canada, or, I'm in the U.S. So it's like, come on. I would definitely say that. And uh, the other one we shared this already, is breathe. And that was a huge turning point for me. I know it sounds so simple, and we mentioned this a little bit, but it is something we all have to do, and just breathe. We're alive for us, and we do struggle. We do go through these experiences, whatever it is, whether it's relationships, finances, etc. As a man, you know, we always want to show up and be doing what's right, when we always have to keep on learning what's really right and how to carry ourselves. So when you get to that point, that breaking point where you feel like all is lost, you do have to just sit back and just breathe. And like the 3 deep breaths is enough to just make you calm your nerves. You can kind of sit back a little bit more and reflect on how things are, and that they're really not that bad as you're making them seem to be. Especially if somebody else is pushing them onto you and going, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, right? And that makes you feel even less of a person or a man, and that you're not doing enough. The third thing, I would say time. I give yourself time to heal. And for me, it took a lot, as we shared a little bit, it took me a lot of time to be prepared for that word divorce. And it's taken me some time thereafter to heal. For example, I worked on my time for mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationships and business and stuff. Like those are my areas I focused on. And I'm still, I've learned things through the years where I got to a point where, okay, I can carry this and move forward with the next area, because I kind of set myself up. Now, that doesn't mean I'm perfect in that one area, but I can go back. And having that time to say, I don't need to complete this in the next 3 months, but I can complete this in the next year, and give yourself space to learn and grow. Less stress, less pressure on yourself. And but we do know that, things take time to heal, and you have to accept that. Like, we all want to be better. We all want to get in that next relationship or whatever, right? We all want to experience all these great excitement, all these exciting things going on in our lives. But you have to put yourself in that place where you can be willing to accept it when it comes. You don't want to get to the point where you're looking at it from a place of uh, needing instead of wanting, and that if you don't give yourself that time to heal, then I think that you always be in that spot, right? Just real quick here, time with people like coming out of abusive relationships, they jump right into another one right away. That's not healing. That doesn't help anything. And unfortunately, those people might not understand what they're jumping into, where they came out of, right? So they all just think that they need somebody to be with them. So I say give yourself time would be the third one.
I think that's a good advice though, because you just mentioned it right there at the end. So many people get out of one relationship and they're bouncing to the next one as quickly as possible, and then they find themselves in a very similar situation because you attract it's just whatever that law of attraction is, right? And until you can heal and maybe get a little better in some different aspect of your life is then you can attract somebody else, or some different. Yeah, that's a huge one, man. I think that's a lot of people just bounce, 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 and you
They
you
do.
watch them because so many people don't like to be alone,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
It's if if you watch around, like so many people can't even be alone with their self for 5 minutes.
Right.
Have a sit in a room and they have to have music on, they have to have a TV on, they have to have something because their brain is going 100,000 miles an hour. And then to take it back to breath, that helps you sit alone in that room, helps you sit alone for a second by learning how to, have and control that breath, which will help you heal. And then also having somebody there just to, when you do have those hard times of struggles, somebody there to, hey man, I'm having this. Can you help me out with that? Having maybe a coach, a mentor, or like you said, even like a stranger or a semi-stranger, right? Once you start
Hmm.
telling them all that stuff, you're probably not strangers anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, John, man, I appreciate those 3 words. Um, I'm gonna put some links in the description to John's podcast. And if you're ever thinking about starting a podcast up or need any help doing any of that stuff, John is a great guy. Uh, Always willing to help, right, John?
Yes. Always. I'm always, and feel free to reach out to me, whether it's going through the struggles and stuff we just mentioned, I'm open to just talking about that as well.
Fantastic, man. I appreciate you very much for being on the show. That was the Legacy Podcast. Enjoy.
Thank you.